Watching your wife giving birth is watching your favourite pub burn down. Hello everybody and welcome to the second ever episode of Overly Honest Dads. My name's Matt, I'm your host, and I'm joined as ever by my good friends Magnus.
Hi everyone.
And John.
Hello everybody.
Okay, so if you're listening to this to our podcast for the first time, this is Overly Honest Dads. This is a podcast where three fathers talk about their experiences of being parents. And I suppose the main objective of what we're doing here is to give you the most honest viewpoint that we can, really. What's the point unless we're being honest? So this is our second ever episode. Last time we discussed what it's like when you get your partner pregnant and sort of being the bloke through pregnancy. And for our second episode, we're going to talk about being the father that's standing there helpless in the birthing room when your wife is in labour. So I'm sure that discussion is going to, result in some interesting discussion. But before that, it's been a week since I've seen you guys. How have you guys been in the last week?
I haven't slept.
Well, at all?
Not much, no.
Okay.
I don't even remember what sleep is like. Quinn has been fairly restless for no apparent reason. However, she's doing it with a smile, which is always nice. If they weren't so cute, then there's a good chance that, we wouldn't take care of them. But she is really happy. She is very, very restless and exploring her surroundings. She's not able to crawl, should I say, roll over just yet. However, she's bloody well trying, which is nice.
For anyone who didn't tune in for the last episode, how old is Quinn, by the way?
She's 4 months and a week.
Okay.
So fairly young.
Yeah, exciting. And you mentioned earlier on that you started weaning as well.
Yeah,
so how's that been going?
Absolutely. We started weaning as soon as she hit 4 months. And we were feeding her, we have been feeding her purees. And Jesus Christ, she makes a goddamn mess.
Really?
It's an absolute disaster. It's like someone got killed. It's like she grabbed an animal and just mullered it, and there's blood all over her front. So she's wearing these special bibs right now to ensure that she doesn't get it absolutely everywhere. But when she's eating that puree, she's really happy. And that happiness leads, one of these. Matt is currently holding up a bib, a really nice bib. What does that say?
I'm not sure really. Nan Quinn, Nan Baby. Oh. I don't know what that means, but it's got little sleeves on it, which is pretty cool.
It's got little bees on it as well.
Exactly.
That's good. Endorsing the bee movie.
Anyway, John, how have you been in the last week?
Well, you fuckers still don't feel this, but it's half term. I'm a father of three. One's 3, one's 5, and one is 8, and they are loud motherfuckers at 6 in the morning, which is what they like to do when it's a long bank holiday weekend, and you think, I'm going to go to bed a little later, watch the boxing, get up a little later tomorrow. The fuck, 6 in the morning.
Do you do it in that silly voice as well?
Oh, yeah, I do. I like talking to myself in a very silly, idiotic voice most days. But
did you do anything nice for the bank holiday?
Yeah, just dad stuff. I think Saturday we had a barbecue. We had another kid come round, Chris's friend James, and they partied all day. We used a new barbecue, manly. And then, Saturday, what did we do Saturday? Jesus, I can't even remember. We went to Blue Water of all things. It was a sunny bank holiday weekend and went to Blue Water instead of going to the beach, which, trust me, with kids, way better to go to a shopping centre, sit down at a restaurant and eat than going to a beach and just going, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that, because you just stress yourself out all day. And then, I ran a 10K on Monday, so for charity.
That's far more productive than I've been.
Best of luck. Yeah. Oh, you've already done it?
I've already done it, yeah.
There we are.
I do a ton of these, so it doesn't make
retract
a difference.
The best of luck then.
Yeah.
Okay. How did you do?
It was a shit one, because I signed up last minute, and I was running with 4 colleagues that were a little slow, and they said, we're going to be in the slow wave. So I went in the last wave possible. And then there were like 2 waves ahead of me, so they started running, and I was in with the fatties, and I was just like kind of queuing to run. I'm not a fattest, I am, but running like a 10K, trying to dodge people because they're in front of you becomes a bit difficult. So instead of doing my usual 40-something minutes, I ended up doing like 56, which sucked.
But does that, the dodging out the way of larger people, is that helping your fitness in any way? Like, because you're dodging to the side, helping your reaction speeds?
No, not when you're trying to do time. I wanted to do time. I was aiming for like 46 minutes, and then I ended up doing 56, which sucked ass.
Maybe you're attracted to them.
Yeah, it's that. You know me too well. That shit ain't gonna happen with me, man. Nah, No, it just...
Oh, that way. I meant the gravitational pull.
The I am not that smart for that joke. That is very funny.
Okay.
Got it a bit too late.
Well, we just lost a certain proportion of our
Yeah.
listenership.
Sorry, fat people out there. I used to be fat, so I'm allowed to say it. So were you, Matt. So
Well, I suppose actually, speaking of which, it might be worth one day talking about how having a kid affects your fitness, because I tell you what, you don't have time for anything that you did before when you have a baby. I mean, maybe when the kids get a bit older, you can start doing that again. But I tell you what, when you first have a kid, it's like a sledgehammer to your life, in a good way. In a good way. Anyway, let's let's move on to the second section. We'll be back in a moment, and we'll talk about being a helpless father when your wife / partner is in labour. See you in a bit. Welcome back to Overly Honest Dads, the world's greatest podcast about fatherhood. We're back now to talk about being in labour, but obviously we weren't in labour unless any of you guys are hiding significant secrets from us.
I've got something to tell you guys.
Yeah?
John is a woman.
OMG. But no, you're not really, are you?
no, I'm not.
No, good stuff.
I've
Good
checked.
stuff. So yeah, it's the essential part of having a kid is being actually born. And when especially when you're having your first kid, you're sort of, you think a lot about that moment, don't you? When you're leading up to it, you think a lot about the moment of birth, helping your wife through labour, and I don't know what your guys' experience was like, but certainly for me, one of the main things you feel is a complete level of helplessness. And so I think it's worthwhile to talk about this as a subject. And obviously, it's really important when your kid's first born. That's a moment you're going to remember for the rest of your life. Now, Magnus, you became a father most recently out of all of us here. So why don't you kick off by telling us a bit about what your experience was like of being the man when your partner is going through labour?
So it's not mean to say that you do feel pretty helpless when you're there with your partner who's doing the heavy lifting, and there's not really much you can do at all.
Heavy pushing,
should I say? Yeah. And even the midwives, I don't know, maybe it was just me, but I did feel very much like I was a spare wheel even to them. I provided emotional support to Romana. I gave her food, I gave her water, and I held the gas and air thingy, whatever it is, and I was putting it in her mouth. Just the gas and air.
Sorry, child in me.
So, how far along was Romana when she went into labour? Was she early? Was she late? Was she on time?
She was late, so she was full term and a week.
Okay.
Yeah. So as everyone knows, if you're a first timer, you're expected to be late. And when Quinn wasn't appearing on her due date, we thought to ourselves, okay, let's just muck around. We went out to London. We went to a nice French restaurant. I got, quite drunk. Had some really nice food. Nothing happened for days afterwards. Yeah. So the week appeared, and then Romana started to feel the pains. It was like 3 in the morning. She woke up. She's like, "Yo, Magnus, this ain't right, man."
Did you say it like that?
She does not sound like that.
It is not right.
She doesn't even sound like that.
And I should probably say at this point that your partner is from the Czech Republic.
She is,
which is the reason for your wonderful accent.
Yes, exactly. She's ex-Soviet. She may be a sleeper spy, who knows? But yeah, she's from the Czech Republic, so her accent is exactly the way that I did it. Hello, what are you doing? And
Yes, comrade.
yeah, so she rubber shoes in motion for all those Red Alert fans out there. Like 2-3 in the morning, she knocked me awake. She's like, "Magnus, this is not right. Something feels weird." So she went to the bog, and the show appeared.
The show?
Yeah, John, do you remember the show? Yeah, you remember the show? Oh dear, yeah. Do you remember do you know the show?
No, I'm a bit lost.
The show is the plug at the front of the vagina.
The mucus plug.
The mucus plug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I'm with you now.
Yeah. So the mucus
I've got
plug.
a story for you later.
Oh,
we didn't talk about this.
Yeah. Oh no, we're Overly Honest Dads. So we're going to be talking about all this shit.
Yeah.
Gonna scare these dads. See, you motherfuckers, your lives are over.
You kept the receipt.
So I guess we're putting the explicit tag on this podcast.
Hell yeah.
Okay.
Hell yeah, motherfucker.
Okay.
She said nothing was. She said this is not right. And then the pains, the labour pains, started to appear. So I really quickly downloaded what do you call it? Fucking the time contractions. Contractions app.
Okay.
So I downloaded a contractions app. And at the time, because you could do that, it's the 21st century. And we're retiming.
Well, you could do it then. You couldn't do it in 2011, mate. Like when I had the first.
True.
Like, there was no fucking apps. All these apps you guys talk about.
You guys didn't even have electricity back then.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? I missed every wave. Like you guys knew dating apps. I missed all of that shit. I was married by then. Yeah. It's depressing.
Yeah, you lost out. You lost out on that.
I didn't say that. She will be listening to this.
So yeah, we were following the contractions, and God, she's such a trooper. She lasted several hours before we went to the hospital. We called up the hospital and we told them, Romana's having contractions. What do we do? This is the timing, the spacing, all that kind of stuff. And they always encourage you to stay at home, which is understandable because it is, as an animal, it's what you're familiar with. It's the safest environment for you, right?
Yeah.
So we stayed at home for several hours because Romana is an absolute trooper. I really mean that. Then we jumped in the car. We filled up the car with way too much stuff. And we parked it on site. And I remember vividly, because it's only 4 months ago, we were walking towards the maternity ward, and every 10 meters, Romana was doubling over because she was experiencing another contraction. There was people walking past us, and what the hell is going on here? What happened to her? We got to the maternity ward, and started. That was it. We just started. Yeah.
So just straight away, and you got straight into a room, was it? Birthing room? Like what, the labour room? Because there are distinctions, aren't there?
It was a triage room.
A triage room.
Yeah. We were in Shaftesbury, it was
Translation for me? What the fuck
So a triage room is where you're assessed.
Okay.
Yeah. And a treatment is given to you based upon priority. Yeah. So when you go to A&E, you're usually triaged. It's what they do on the battlefield as well. You're triage, whether, if you've lost a leg, if you've just had a superficial wound, that kind of thing. And they will assess you based upon how far along you are. So Romana I wouldn't say she was that far along. I can't remember how many centimetres dilated. I think she was like 2 or 3 centimetres dilated, something along those lines. And within no time, she was fully dilated. Damn. It was like, it was absolutely no time. The thing is, however, we thought that she would be quite quick to give birth because her mother gave birth to her sister, her oldest sister, first kid, within 4 hours. And her sister gave birth to her son within, I think it was 6 hours, first kid, which is quite a short amount of time for a first kid. So, we thought that Romana would be similar. She's got really good hips, and we thought the kid would have a good time.
Hips don't lie.
They don't lie, man. Swear it's at. And we thought that Quinn would pop out quite soon, and it wasn't the case.
By the way, the pop out reference is fantastic. I have to say, it's pretty amazing. I love the pop out.
Okay, so you talked a bit about how Romana is a trooper, which is helpful in that situation. How are you doing at this point? Were you being as supportive as you would like to be? Were you freaking out? Paint us a picture.
I became really good at rubbing her back.
Okay,
rubbing one out.
Well, there's not much else she can do.
Yeah.
So I spoke to her.
You look so awkward right now.
That's a bare minimum. Speaking to someone is the least you can do.
Okay, so I'll give you a rundown of what I did.
Yeah.
I tried to take charge of organising stuff, speaking to the midwives when she definitely could not at all, telling them what's going on, going out and finding them when Romana needed them, making sure that she was fed, making sure that she was hydrated, and making sure that her back was rubbed really well. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's not much else that you can do. You have to be there. Your presence is important.
Sure.
Now that I've gone through that, I can't even fathom women that go through that on their own. If they've had a partner that's just gone and fucked off because they're a piece of shit, you know, and they don't want a responsibility. And that woman is in that room on her own, this alien, sterile environment, and giving birth, something that maybe they've never experienced before. It's a fundamental change to their body, and they have to do that on their own. Like, I can't even begin. So, you know, I'm going on a tangent here. This is another topic. But
I agree with that, man.
yeah, I think we all do.
I mean,
It's
there's
pure
a-
scum, right?
Yeah, mate, I think I'm going to be very out there. Not everybody would agree, but if you're a guy who's had a kid and you're listening to this and you weren't there, dude, you're not a fucking dad. I'm sorry, but you can't not be there.
It's controversial.
It's controversial, but
That means my dad isn't a dad.
my dad is the same,
Which
dude.
you know, you're telling me that. Now, I wonder who my real dad
My
actually
dad
is.
was the same
Well,
thing.
it
My dad was the
depends,
same.
John.
I just think you need to be present. You need to be there to. I mean, I overdid it, and we'll talk about that later. But I think there is an aspect of being there during that. It's really a rough, man. It's really a rough thing.
Yeah, but I do think at the same time that these days it's pretty much a given that you're going to be there.
Yeah.
You know, there's
Yeah,
not really
different,
that.
yeah.
I don't think there's that many. Well, at least in this country, I know the attitudes are probably different elsewhere in the world, but here, I think it would be only a minority of blokes that don't show up these days. It's only like the real scumbags or that sort of
Those
stuff.
are guys I'm talking to.
You do have old-fashioned women that don't want their partners there.
Yeah.
And it's
Really? Still?
yeah, absolutely. It's like, you know, that's their choice.
Yeah.
And it's fine. For example, I wasn't allowed down the business end. I was
Yeah.
not allowed. And when Romana was like close and Quinn's head was popping out a little bit, you know, she was there. You could see the cap, you know, through her vagina. I couldn't because I wasn't allowed. But it was like that close. And Romana was still saying to the midwives through, I don't know how, because she was semi-conscious. She was like, Magnus is not allowed down the business end. So I never got to see what happened there. And everything is hunky-dory. Our relationship is great.
Okay. So how was it actually in that time then? Because obviously, you know, there's a lot of build up with labour, and then a kid comes out, and everything starts to happen. So how was the actual moment of that?
It was all a bit too much, but it was a culmination of the fact that this was one of the most alien things I've ever been through. Yeah, you know, your partner is just experiencing some really weird, you know, experiences. You know, things come out of her that you've never seen before. For example, the show. There was a lot of show. There was a lot of show. Yeah, a lot of show. Way more than I thought. I thought it was just a plug. And
Okay.
like, you know, my idea of a plug was like a cork. But it's not. It varies upon depending upon the woman, and there can be quite a lot. And she had a lot of show, and there was bits and bobs and, you know, juices that. Yeah, I know.
Man.
I'm bringing back memories, right?
Soon,
I'm bringing back bad
I don't know
memories.
what it is about the word juice there that just. Honestly, we ate before we recorded, and now I regret eating.
But you also had a juice before we had dinner, so you know.
Yeah.
Just ruin it for you.
Moist juice.
Don't do that.
I'm sorry.
We were doing so well. Okay, so Quinn pops out, to use your phrasing.
did, yeah.
And what happened next?
So Quinn popped out. Can I go back a bit actually? So
Yeah.
Quinn was ready to pop out.
Okay.
Her head was like the top of her head, we'll call it the cap, was out there into the world, but the rest of her was not appearing. And Romana was pushing and pushing and pushing, and she just wasn't coming out. She was pushing so hard. So intervention was required, and she was given an epidural, pethidine, as well. So we did the epidural, and this is a weird thing for me. The whole time we were in a triage room, which was secluded, the blinds were closed. We had a midwife coming in, and it was very quiet, and she had ethereal music going on in the background. What was it called? Hypnobirthing music, right? By the way, that didn't really work for us. That was a load of bullshit.
Yeah, I agree.
That was a load of
That's why
bullshit.
I'm laughing. Just-
Yeah. I remember looking at Romana after the birth, and we were like, yeah, that was shit. But yeah, she had the music going on in the background, and it was just like a really calm environment. And then we had the epidural, because Quinn wasn't coming out, and we were brought into an operating theatre. So a theatre.
Oh, so you actually changed rooms at that
We
point?
changed rooms, yeah.
And did you
yeah.
had any idea that was going to happen, or was that just completely out of the blue?
Yeah. We knew that she would have to change rooms, but St George's was massively overcrowded at the time, and we had to wait for rooms to become available.
Jesus.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was really bad, and the transfer was awful because she was put onto a wheelchair. Yeah, sitting down with Quinn popping out of her at the bottom
Oh God!
in a lift with other people.
Did that put her back
In the lift with other
with
people.
other people. Yeah, and she was there like, oh fuck, and there was a dude there like, what's going on here? What is this?
Is that a head? Oh my god!
Yeah.
Wow.
It was not that. That was the part she disliked the most. Was the transfer. No one likes fucking transfers. So we signed the documentation that epidural can fuck you up, but it was fine. She had the epidural done. So before that, she was wheeled into the theatre, and there was about 10 people. I can still see their fucking faces in my head, burnt into my memory. There was a bunch of student doctors because St George's is a university hospital, and they had the anaesthesiologists, they had the consultants, and they were all flipping amazing. All amazing.
Much love to the NHS, man.
Much love to St George's, yeah, for real. Like, they were so cool. They understood where I was coming from. They obviously knew where Romana was coming from. But me as a father, as like a spare wheel, they knew how to handle me as well, which I couldn't believe that. It was amazing. Like, they were comforting me for crying
they knew
out
how
loud.
to handle me as well. That's
Yeah, we'll come to that. Oh,
Yeah,
goodness
yeah.
No,
me.
it's true. It's
Goodness
true.
me.
It's good. The NHS live through a lot of it with dads and mums and the experience. as
Yeah, it's not their first time.
No,
No,
it's
no,
not.
definitely not.
It's
They go
not
through
their
this every
first
day.
rodeo.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, she had the epidural. And for Romana, she said it was the best thing ever. Everything just fell away. She couldn't feel anything from the waist down. Nothing at all.
Did she shit herself?
No, she didn't.
Ah.
Nah, she didn't.
When she was pushing.
Nah, she didn't at all. There's nothing exiting, no brown. It was cool. So
Just a cap.
the consultant said to her, it was in his Irish accent, it was like, well, Romana, now that you can't feel anything, you have to do everything with your mind. Okay? So you need to imagine that you're pushing. You need to think that you're pushing Quinn out. You're not going to feel it, but you can feel it in your mind. And so when he said to her, push, she pushed 3 times in total, and Quinn came out. And Romana was on cloud 9 the whole time. And as soon as Quinn came out, she started crying. And there she was, this live creature. And
Live creatures.
I must admit to you, I can be fairly stoic, but at that time it was far too much. I broke down, like full on.
Like ugly tears. Or
Yeah. It wasn't long. It was like 5 seconds, but it happened.
yeah.
And I couldn't see, and I was shit over my glasses, tears and whatnot. And they gave Quinn to me first, wrapped her in a towel, gave her to me. They checked her, did all the APGAR tests, all that kind of stuff, gave her vitamin K. And when I was holding Quinn, I was looking down at her. This thing looked like nothing, like neither of us. It was weird. Looking at her, and she was there looking up at me. And her eyes she wasn't able to focus, you could see that. And she was experiencing for the first time light from the outside world, and it was affecting her eyes. So she wasn't able to keep her eyes open. She was constantly blinking, while looking at me. She could see that there was this form above her. So she was staring at me, and the connection that we had then was just weird. I've never experienced anything like it before. And I was just holding this thing, and she had a weight to her. She was an actual person.
Yeah, that's a good point, because you spend so long talking about it. You just spend like 8-9 months. As soon as you get the positive test result, you spend all that time, like we talked about last week. It's constantly on your brain. You can't ever really forget. And then it's out. I mean, it's such an amazing realization following that, following the pregnancy.
Absolutely.
Oh.
So that was kind of my birthing story, really, and everything afterwards was fairly hunky dory.
Can you just go back a bit to the doctor, telling her to think and push? But can you do all of that again with an Irish accent for me?
I can't. Maybe another
I don't
accent.
know why you said Irish accent. You just specified.
Yeah, he was an Irish guy.
Damn.
He was an Irish guy.
I don't remember. I honestly have a blackout remembering who was there. Like, my wife remembers all of them. I don't remember any of them. I can't remember their faces or anything. I just remember the experience being a bit rough, but yeah, weird.
Fair enough. Well, we're going to come to you last on this, John, because you've got, well, not only have you had 3 kids, so you've got 3 times the amount of stuff to talk about, but I understand there's quite an interesting incident that you were involved in. But we'll go quickly over my situation, and feel free to fire questions at me at any point. But so yeah, I've got a 7-month-old daughter called Amelie, and so yeah, it's still fairly fresh in my mind. So like you and Romana, Magnus, we went a bit late. I think it ended up being about 2 weeks late by the time we went into hospital. And I don't know if you guys had this as well, but we had our induction booked in way in advance. I think it was in month 7. The midwife booked us an induction just in case we went over. I didn't realize everyone got that booked in just in case, but yeah, so ended up going in, and I mean, everything was really went really smoothly overall, but there were a couple of things that happened that I suppose, we didn't really prepare for, because, a lot can go wrong. And so it got to the point where Alex wasn't having regular enough contractions or something along those lines. And so they decided to induce. And so they give you a chemical which helps induce labor. Now, when you get that medication, whatever it is, I honestly don't know off the top of my head, that means that you're almost definitely going to need an epidural, because that brings the contractions on like super strong. And so Alex was waiting for an epidural, and the help me out, Magnus.
Anesthesiologist.
And what Magnus said, yeah. And so that person came in with this huge needle to do the epidural, and she had 3 attempts at getting it in, and all of them went wrong. And
that's dangerous, man. Fuck.
It wasn't good at all. And the woman that did it, I mean, I know everyone who works for the NHS does a great job, and we don't mean to disrespect any professionals.
But she was a bitch.
Well, she looked like that zany person at a party that you might try and avoid. That might start talking to you about healing crystals or her homemade elderberry wine or something. I mean, I'm sure she was lovely, but I didn't want her anywhere near my pregnant wife, especially not after she had 3 failed attempts at getting the needle in, and Alex had blood running down her back. Jesus. And one of the needles sort of hit one of her nerves somehow, and she had a massive pain that just shot through her body. It's like, this is not what you want in that situation. But thankfully, someone came along and got it all hooked up, and Alex was very happy after the epidural. Yeah. I mean, since then, any of Alex's friends that have been pregnant, Alex has been singing the praises of epidurals.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah. And I think actually it's maybe an important point to mention, because from what Alex has been telling me, like, there's quite a culture of trying to get through labour without having an epidural. Yes. Like, it's the natural way. But when it comes down to it, if it's making you a happier person as you're going through labour to have an epidural, does that make you a bad person? I don't think it does.
I think I completely agree. It's something I was going to bring up, because Elisa was Italian family and all the rest. Oh no, you got to live the experience, this, that, the other. And she was like, oh, it's going to be easy. It can't be that painful. Dude, when that shit kicks in, it's painful. And it's not, and I'll be honest, from a guy's side, it's not nice seeing the other half in that much pain. And the moment the epidural kicked in, it was peace on earth.
Cloud 9.
It really was. And we were really lucky in a way, because the anesthesiology didn't go through all that crap of missing and then all the rest. But they had to be really careful, because she has MS anyway, so they've got the senior guy in to get it done. But it's definitely drugs all day. I mean, I wouldn't, and it not. It's the 21st century. I know people want to experience pain and all the rest of it, but if you've got the technology to avoid the pain and have an easy birth, I mean, it makes sense, right?
Just on the back of that, don't be afraid of the birthing cascade, because you'll have pethidine, which is usually the first drug, which it induces the labour. If that doesn't work, then you'll go for an epidural, and beyond that, there's Ventouse, etc., and forceps. And so the cascade is where you try one thing, it doesn't work, and you have to go down it. And yes, there is a small increased risk of things occurring, but usually it really does help out the woman.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid of it.
Yeah, exactly. I just think it's the point that Alex mentioned that people just seem. Well, I think some women put other women under pressure about
big
it.
time.
And yeah, so for anyone listening that's expecting, epidurals aren't necessarily an evil thing in any way, shape, or form. Okay, and we'll just take a quick break now, and when we come back, we'll talk more about being in labour. Hi, welcome back. So where were we? I think I was talking about Alex being in labour, wasn't I? Great.
Yes.
So I mentioned the stuff about the epidural, so that was fun and games, and then from there it was mostly plain sailing, although it took a long time. So the epidural happened about 8 a.m. in the morning on the Tuesday morning, and Emily wasn't born until 2 a.m. on the Wednesday morning. So that's quite a lot of time. And so in that time, we didn't really do anything other than wait around. One thing that actually did happen that's worth mentioning as well is that there were issues with Alex's temperature and baby's heart rate. So Alex's temperature went up and there was a problem with baby's heart rate as well. And they started to suspect sepsis. Which is a very serious.
Oh dear.
Yeah, it was a bad time, and so that actually led to us having to stay in the hospital for about 3 or 4 days after Emily had given birth. And Alex had given birth. Emily hopefully won't be giving birth for a long time yet. But yeah, they had to take samples and just check that they weren't ill. So that was a bit of a stressful time. The labour itself was fairly straightforward. They actually scheduled the labour. So the midwife said that we were going to start pushing around 2 a.m. I don't know why they picked that time, but Alex had like a sleep for a few hours, and I sort of potted around for a bit. And then when it came time to push, Alex specifically said that she didn't want me to do anything. Like, push, she wanted me to do nothing at all.
You know why they say 2 a.m.?
Why?
Lunch break.
Really?
No lie.
What? So when's
So
lunch break?
It's lunch break. They do the lunch break and then they start again at 2.
So lunch break's what, between 1 and 2 in the morning?
Between 1 and 2 in the morning, yeah.
They
I was
have a
talking to one of the
changeover.
nurses. Yeah, they have a changeover in a break.
So
We experienced a changeover
so
as well,
basically-
which delayed things.
Yeah, the birth of your daughter was around people's lunchtime, bitch.
Well, I suppose people do need time to eat a sandwich.
They're not allowed.
Yeah, I mean, it was all fairly straightforward from there, really, I suppose. Like, there was a lot of pushing. There was a lot of women that appeared all of a sudden and helped out. And then, yeah, all of a sudden I could see my daughter's head poking out of my wife's vagina, which is an image I'll never forget.
So
Do you
you're at
stand
the
on
business end.
I wasn't at the business end. I was at the top end, but I think
had a
something to do
mirror.
with the angles that they were
Yeah,
at that meant that I could just see the head poking out, and yeah, that doesn't leave you that image.
Nope.
It doesn't go anywhere, and so yeah. But I mean, I'm not someone who's necessarily massively squeamish about that stuff. But yeah, that was interesting. And so once Emily came out, and they checked her out, and she was all fine, they put her onto Alex's chest, and Alex couldn't quite get a grip on her straight away. She was slipping down a little bit, so I ran round the other side of the bed so I could prop up Emily, and I tried to prop her up from her sort of backside, as it were, and little did I know that Emily had just done her first ever poo on the outside. And so my first actual interaction with my daughter was getting my hand covered in her black tarry shit.
No, you got shat on.
Which was not good. Magnus, remind me of what the word for that poo is.
Meconium.
Okay, yeah, what Magnus said. And thankfully it doesn't smell like your baby's first few poos are not like sort of stinky brown turds
No.
like we grown adults
It's
do.
true. They're actually quite appetizing.
Fair enough.
There's a juice to them.
If you're into Marmite,
Oh, Jesus, man.
Actually, it is a similar sort of like,
It
you know,
is. It is.
yeah, it doesn't taste the same though.
No.
Strangely.
That's not salty.
No, but yeah, the first thing that happened, my first interaction with Emily was she shat on me. And
I
then,
love you, Dad.
and then yeah, after that, I suppose it's the same thing that everyone goes through with the, you know, the weighing table and all of that sort of stuff. I took photos, and then because of everything that happened with the potential sepsis, Emily was actually taken away then for like I think 2 hours because they needed to put antibiotics. She needed to get antibiotics right away in case anything was wrong. So they put this little thing on her foot, and apparently it took them ages to find a vein to put that in.
Yeah.
So not only did Alex spend time struggling to get the epidural in, Emily had 2 hours of them trying to get antibiotics into her foot.
Oh,
Wow.
dude. Wow.
Yeah,
Jeez.
yeah.
So how was it when Amelie was taken away from you? I'm sure that must have been very stressful.
Alex went to sleep because she was exhausted, and I'd been at the hospital for a while then, and one thing that's worth mentioning is that Alex has a bunch of food allergies, and so I had to go back and make her food for the next day because she needed to eat food, and so I had to go and get stuff for her. So I just went home at that point, and I came back the next day because I had to make about 3 meals for Alex.
From
try
a
and
very
get some kit myself.
selfish point of view, I guess that was a good break in a way.
I suppose, yeah. But over the next 5 days, I was spending my days at the hospital, getting back as late as I could, back home as late as I could in time to catch Tesco, cook 3 meals, go to bed, and then go in the next morning. So it was quite a stressful little time, really. But I mean, the most important thing is that everything was all right with Emily. So, and it was. So yeah, I suppose that's my story.
Just a group question on the back of that as well. This is for everyone here. How long did you take off from work when your kids were born?
I did the paternity straight away.
I had ended up just over 2 weeks because Alex had such a long hospital stay, Alex and Amelie, and so I asked for 2 weeks from the day we got home from the hospital. But I mean, I was working from home at the time, so even when I was back at work, I was still at home, so it's a bit different.
Yeah. No, I did paternity all 3. We had more help with the first 2 because our dad was still around, and then he had he had cancer and he died before the third was between the third being born and him dying. So I think he died in August 27th, and Liam was born in June, so he was on his way out basically. So he couldn't come over. He didn't even meet him, which was a shame. But yeah, I did the first 2 paternities. My paternity was enough, and the family took over. The third was a little more complicated, but we kind of dealt with it. Sort of
Statutory 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. Yeah. I was 2 months working from home, however, but the only reason why we did that is because we don't really have any family. Obviously my mum is a different side of London, and Romana's family is another country. Yeah. So yeah, that's why
her family came over, took the plane and came over because obviously we're Italian.
Yeah.
By the way, yes, I'm Italian. I don't sound it, but yeah, they came over to help, so that helped.
Yeah.
Big time. So
it's good.
Okay, John. So Magnus and I have told our stories, fairly recent stories. Now you have 3 children.
Yes.
So why don't you tell us about how things went when your first child was born?
Where's your hair, John?
Yeah, where's my hair? Right. It's interesting, intense story in the sense that I have less clear memories than you guys have, in the sense that I lived it 8 years ago, so it's been a while. But the intense parts I remember are the ones that sort of rough you up the most and yet make it special at the same time. So I went, she went, luckily she has a mess and...
Luckily?
Well, yeah, for births it's quite nice because you kind of get prioritised over everything in a way.
Okay.
So we got our own room and you get all the rest of it without going through private. So in a way we really got looked after, which was nice. It was quite an first child, so her dad was over, my parents were over, which were absolutely, pain and just an intense pre-birth experience of the family constantly being on you, wanting to know. And then contractions, go to the hospital. No, you're not dilated enough, go home. Oh, I mean, that's just the most biggest disappointment. You just think, yeah, we're nearly, oh no, fuck off, go home. Oh, fine. So you end up going home thinking, and then within 12 hours we had to go. Now, the interesting thing about, you were talking about the cap, my wife's waters never broke with Christopher.
Okay.
So what happens when waters don't break?
They break them.
Yep. And what happens when a baby poos in the waters?
It goes all like
it goes
black
green.
And shit. Oh, is it green?
It goes green. So
and this is not a safe thing, as far as I'm aware.
No, they need to break the waters to get the baby out because obviously the baby pooed and it's not meant to happen. So this is one of the harsh memories that I remember. It's just like, oh, we need to burst the waters. And unlike these 2 very smart guys, I thought I could take it. So I stood on the business end. not something I recommend. It's a pretty intense experience. It's rough, to put it nicely. It's like it's just your favorite thing, just being kicked to shit in a way.
Actually, that reminds me. I once heard a stand-up comedian describe watching your wife giving birth as watching your favourite pub burn down.
Yeah, something like that. But it's something more genuine than a pub in a way. I don't know. It's just like, it just kind of hurt me.
It is. I understand that as well.
I think that the way I described it last time to you guys was just sort of like you're building a sandcastle as a child, and then your cousin comes along and kicks it, and it's like, fuck, you ruined my castle. That's pretty much what happens. But all I know is I'm standing on a business end. They poke the sack, water burst, green, and it's like, why the fuck is it green? Which is not the reaction you want to have. But she saw it as well, and her reaction was very similar. But yeah, it's just a bit rough seeing it green, and there was the heart rate issue of it going up and down. So again, standing on a business end, it's rough. Epidural, she wanted it. She wanted the drugs. She needed the drugs. She was in pain, so she went through that. And I think there was you go through the whole preparation of what the birth is going to be like. You go to the lessons and they tell you, it's going to be like this, you're going to have this support and that support, and this will happen and that will happen. And keep in mind that obviously if we need to cut, we will let you know. And, this is the reason we'll cut, because if it rips, it could rip downwards towards the bum hole, and it could, could be a really bad infection. So, they cut when they need to, and they will let you know when it happens and all the rest of it. So all of this you have in your mind when you're going through the experience, and she's pushing, trying to get the baby out, can't feel the pushing, and the epidural is helping and whatnot. And imagine, like you were saying, Magnus, imagine the pushing and all the rest of it. All this intenseness is going on. This guy pulls out scissors and starts cutting her. Whoa. And
you weren't expecting this?
No.
They didn't warn you?
Well, apparently they warned, and I didn't hear it. So my wife heard him, I didn't. So I quite kindly moved a nurse slightly, and then sort of hit a doctor on the other end in his arm, and then I got pushed back. He has to. But it's the worst fucking noise you ever hear in your life.
Ugh.
It's like cutting into a ribeye with a pair of scissors, and we hear and they're cutting sideways.
I'm visibly cringing right now. This is
like,
fucked up.
Sideways.
Jeez. Or into the inside of the thigh.
Yeah. To make. So it's not even up. You think upwards, no, because they can't ruin the clip. Not downwards, because you don't want it to rip that way. So they cut sideways. And the mother. Seriously. It's. And I think it's just.
Oh my
so
God.
You're not fucking ready for it. You're basically not ready. I can't even describe. You're just not ready for it.
That just made you see red at that point.
Well, it was like, he should have warned me, but he did, but I didn't hear it.
Oh,
so it was kind of your fault for not listening. This is what I'm picking up on here.
As always. But, as Magnus said, NHS staff managed the situation beautifully. Kicked me out the fucking room. Oh man, it was rough. But I have to say the other thing, the other image that scars me thinking about it is before the cutting and all the rest of it, she's pushing. She's about 3 or 4 centimeters dilated, and I look and I was like, I see hair. Is that my son's head? And then you just realize you're seeing a slight sort of gap, and you're seeing a head effectively. You're seeing like the top of a head, and it's like, is that hair? Oh shit, it's hair, isn't it? And it's just a bit weird seeing that, even though you're prepared with the idea that it'll come out heads first. You're just like,
it was your son.
Head. That's my son. No, it wasn't an alien. It was my son.
Okay.
It was green, but it was my son. But it was just like, it's
waxed
hair, and that's. But it was like hair, and it's a bit greenish and all. But it's just like shit. That's his head, and I'm like, that hole is not big enough for it to come out. Like that's all I kept thinking. Now, the other thing I will say, my wife's going to hate me for this. My wife is teeny tiny. She's about 5 subways tall. Sorry. She's 5 foot tall. She's that teeny tiny lady and has had 3 kids. Fuck knows how. Well, my fault every time.
You think?
Yeah, you think. I reckon she planned it, but that's... But seriously, this tiny lady pushing out this little spider, because I mean he came out and he was so long and
They
cute.
are. They're gangly, aren't they?
Yeah, all gangly. Just like you're meant to be chubby and small. He's like all gangly with big feet, and it's just like, oh man, it's just amazing and it's fucking mind blowing. At that point, a very weird thing happened. So a friend of ours who's I think he's 70 this year, or 69 or 70 this year, that we all worked with, Julian, had told me years before. He said, "Oh, when my boys were born, the first thing I did was count their fingers and toes." And he said, "I don't know why I did it, but all I know is I counted their fingers and toes." My son was born. No word of lie. I don't know why. I sat there and looked at his hands, and I'm like, 5 fingers, and it's like 5 toes, and then like 5 and 5, 5 and 5, 5 and 5. And I'm like, why the fuck am I thinking about Julian right now? As I'm holding my son for the first time. It was just the weirdest thing, and I don't know why I automatically went and did that, but it was just sort of, is the baby okay kind of thing, and I wanted to, it's really weird.
I think we all did the same. It was the first thing I did as well.
Well,
is it?
I heard
Yeah.
the midwife count them and say that they had them, and I trusted them from that point.
6.
6. No, I figured they could probably count.
Yeah.
Yeah, they seem pretty capable.
3 eyes, it's all good.
So that was baby number 1, John.
Yeah.
Any interesting info to share about babies number 2 and 3?
Yeah, I was talking about dads that don't go to births. Well, I wasn't allowed. I did the next 2. So.
You were barred.
Yeah, I was barred practically. Well, her best friend stepped in, and I basically stayed out.
So were you at the hospital but outside of the room, or like...
Yeah, well, we lived close to the hospital, so I kept going backwards and forwards. It was a bit longer with Sienna. It took a little longer, so I kept going backwards and forwards. And yeah, that was, and it was sort of come in when the business is done type of thing, which was, the second birth wasn't stressful at all. It was the best birth out of the 3. Just because I think the first is a lot of it's a very intense experience, and plus my fucking mother wanted to go in for some reason. It's just like my wife was like, "Why does she want to come in here? Fuck off!" And I'm like, "I know," and it's just just a bit intense. And oh yeah, the other aspect I forgot to talk about my first, since I mentioned the 1 ball aspect last time, I might as well talk about this. The other thing I counted when he was born, it was like, he's got 2 balls. Walked outside, looked at my father-in-law. I said, "He's got 2 balls," and he looks at me like. And I'm like, "Oh, you don't know," and then walk back in. That was just a weird thing I did. And then, but yeah, my daughter was stress free. She was beautiful. She was the chubbiest of the 3. She was the heaviest of the 3. She's so cute.
Obese baby.
Baby. And then the third was a rough one. So I kept texting her best friend because I kept going up. So it's the only time she gave birth to a different hospital from the other 2. And I kept going up and down to Denmark Hill, and I'm like, and then in the end, just sort of start texting her, you let me know when something happens, and then fucking radio silence. I'm like, the fuck? Jump in a car, drive there, get there, find out where she is. I go there, and Stefania's there. And I said, "How's it going?" And she's like pale, and I'm like, "What's up?" And she's like, "Oh no, all good. They just had to take the baby out, and yeah, I'm gonna go and see my husband." So she left and goes, and I'm there with Elisa. I was like, "What happened?" And basically came out blue and slumped on the table.
Really?
And it took a few seconds before he sort of breathed. It was a pretty rough birth.
What was his Apgar? Do you remember that?
No, I don't, because I showed up. Obviously, I
Sorry,
asked the dad,
of
didn't
course.
show up, but it was just a rough experience for them, because they saw him just come out, boom, slump on the table type of thing. Is he alive? Is he not? And then, and he cries, and they just took him away.
Okay.
And he just went in an incubator. He got fed through the nose for like 2 days, which was heartbreaking. Seeing your baby and just holding his hand. I still got the videos of me holding his hand through. Oh mate, it was so rough.
And how did you feel through all that?
Oh, it's horrible because there's one thing about having a baby that is that skin to skin contact when a baby's born, and they tell you skin to skin, take your shirt off, hold him close, keep him warm. And you couldn't do that. And I'm sitting there just holding his hand through this fucking hole in plastic. Do you know what I mean? It's a horrible feeling. On top of that, while I'm talking to Elisa, after they're taking the baby away, I'm still not seeing the baby at this point. I'm talking to Elisa. I'm like, "How you doing?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm like, darling, you're fucking pale. Why are you so pale?" And they said, "Oh, I don't know." And then they said, "Oh," and she stood up like blood there was still some placenta left in there.
Oh wow!
So she nearly bled to death. So they had to take her
Jesus Christ,
to
John.
emergency out to have a uterus scraped, which she described to me later, and pretty much scooping with the hand is what the doctor was doing.
Oh Jesus!
Oh mate, she describes it literally. The guy was doing this. He was saying, "I'm so sorry" while he was doing it because he had to scrape out the placenta.
Jesus.
It just and then they had to do reconstruction and whatnot. But it's just rough, mate. Just
Down
rough.
to the rind.
Just rough, and it's just. Fucking! I just heard that. I am too late on your jokes. Jesus Christ, fuck you.
I was hoping you would notice.
Oh
So we could
my
just go past it.
No,
You know, some things don't need to be recognised.
no, that fucking recognize that. But yeah, it was just rough. It was
Yeah,
just
it sounds it, man. And I think it goes to show like how impressive women are. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying that to be condescending or
No.
what have you, but I can't imagine having anything of mine scraped,
yeah.
let
Yeah,
alone
mate.
a uterus.
Completely agree. There's no patronisation in our appreciation of
No,
what the
mate.
fuck they've done.
Yeah.
It's insane.
It's-
You see a whole different part
Yeah.
of your partner that you know. I was with Romana for nearly 8 years, and we know each other intimately, like full on, down to the
You
cellular
never
level.
scraped a uterus. Oh, so dark.
You know, if you're bored on a Friday night. Okay, right. So let's think about some final conclusions.
Final-
So I mean, hopefully there are going to be some fathers to be out there who are just are going to be thinking a lot about going through labour. So John, what is your number one bit of advice that you would give to a father to be?
Boys, get on the gas and air. No lie. The whole stress with the third, gas and air, amazing. She never liked gas and air from day one. It made her feel sort of nauseous and sick, and then she ended up doing epidurals for all three. When the nurse is not looking, get on the gas and air. Honestly, best thing the NHS could provide for dads, not just mums. The NHS should consider this for the stress that dads go through, because you can't contribute anything. You're the fucking spare wheel in the room, as Magnus put it. Give gas and air to people. Boy, that sorted my life out during the stress. And I will say, I had the stress in the first birth of having family wanting to be involved. Remember that your wife, partner's giving birth. You are there to support her. Everybody else can go and do one. Don't worry about family, their opinions, their input, they're wanting to be there. It's a team effort between you and her. Work together. Don't worry about everybody else, because that level of stress you don't need when you're going to enjoy that experience of birth, because it is an experience to live, really.
Magnus?
I've got a couple. May I?
Okay.
Do not be afraid of the birthing cascade. That you get absolutely no points for going natural and being in pain. At the end of the day, it's going to be your baby's health. Do not pack everything. Don't pack the kitchen sink. Pack light. You're not going to need it. And be there for your partner.
Yeah. Sound advice.
Amen.
And for me, I think it's just listen to what your partner is telling you in terms of how they want you to support them. I mean, if you decide to start freestyling your support and coming up with ideas for how to help, the reality is you're probably gonna be hindering rather than helping. And if your partner says don't join in with the calls to push, then don't do that. Listen to what they've got to say, because you are there as a helper and not a great deal else. There was a good line in a show, Parks and Recreation. Have any guys seen that? Where if something's wrong with someone else, you don't need to try and fix it. Just say that sucks. Obviously, just saying that sucks as your wife's in labour is probably not going to help much.
Nope.
Because I mean, that advice probably isn't good for that context. But in general, that sucks is a good way to be empathetic. Okay, guys. Well, I think that's probably about it. Unless you guys have any final thoughts you'd like to share.
No, I'm good.
Okay, good stuff. So thanks for joining us, everyone out there, for the second ever episode of Overly Honest Dads. If you guys have any suggestions for us, any comments, any feedback, good or bad, I especially want lots of bad feedback because it'll be quite amusing.
And he's a negative prick.
Yeah, then email us at overlyhonestdads@gmail.com. Next week, we'll be back with another episode talking about the first couple of weeks after you get your baby home. So please join us again and look out for that. All that remains is for me to thank Magnus.
Have a good one, everyone.
And John.
Have a good evening.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. See you guys again soon. Thank you. Goodbye.